Well, it's an interesting thing because I always like with the internet, it's so easy to do what we all wanted to do as writers is put the work out there and just don't ask questions, just put it out there. And I'm like really glad. I really get excited when people do that. But and it creates a space where you like are constantly, creating and funneling out content. But for me, it's interesting because as a writer, Instagram has become a really, really good place for me to talk to other writers and talk to editors and pitch. Like I've pitched on Instagram, which is insane. And share my writing in a way that's, like, or even talking about, I'm like, when I'm in the midst of a story or pitching, I try not to say much about it. So that idea stays invaluable and, or whatever. So it's changed so much because you promote yourself as a writer on social media, and it kind of seems silly, but it's also been a really great way for me to connect with other writers and talk to people and get ideas and interview like different people, and just have a bigger space for even research. I guess it's just like reading, like you can discover so many weird. That's where the mushroom thing came along. Like, why do I see I'm reading books and articles? I think a big part of where I get ideas is through reading other books and reading through different ideas that I want to learn more about. Writing is obviously just a personal exploration to know more about yourself and to know more about the world around you. So I, a lot of the times, pitch, like if I find a really good idea, then I'll try to pitch New York Times, and they give you like, if we don't respond to you in 48 hours, just assume that you can pitch someone else. And which I've gotten many. I keep all my rejection letters just to keep me humble. And there are many of them. But on the flip side, if I work with I work with a few publications that I work with ongoing. So sometimes they'll email me and say, hey, Brittany, I think this story might be really good for you and your style of writing. Can you, put together an outline for us, and we'll put together a proposal for you and a timeline. Or I work with companies too that send out like monthly research proposals where they kind of put together, this is the topic we have this month. Here are some article ideas, but you can pitch us anything around this topic. So they kind of stick to their editorial calendar. I love working with editors that reach out to me or that kind of give me the themes throughout the year, because then I can kind of get inspired and there's a little more structure. And it's more of a conversational aspect with the editor, and you build relationships, and the stuff you're pitching blindly, they're just kind of like, there's no softness. It's just a lot of the times you come too late because the editorial process moves so quickly that you're like, oh, we have talked way too much about COVID, or we are going to talk about this year, and that's totally off. So you don't really have a pulse on what's going on for the publication. There was a story I pitched for a Girl Boss that I had been pitching for like a year. I read this like 60-page macroeconomic document about student loan debt. And I was proposing like what would happen if we wiped it away as a country. And I did all this research and I pitched and pitched and pitched. No one wanted it. And finally Girl Boss picked it up, and it ended up being like one of my most favorite pieces. So, and I like set it down for a long time and then ignored it. So I think ideas kind of bounce around, and same with sometimes it's just an idea. Like some editors just like, okay, give me the idea, a little structure behind it. And sometimes it's I've written the whole piece already. And in that case, that student loan piece, I had written the whole thing already, and we just restructured it for their publication. So that depends too, like, okay, I've written this whole entire thing and I have it pretty thought out. Would you want this? But I think a lot of editors like it when you're like, hey, I kind of have this idea. Here are my kind of main thoughts, like my thesis statement or like some bullet points that I have. Are you into this? And they kind of jump in and they can reshape it for their publication specifically and their voice and tone. So that's kind of a variation too with pitching. Like you could have the whole piece already written, but a lot of times the idea is good enough.